I've just been up at a luncheon, so I had to escape from there and get down to here. Good. Thank you very much for coming in, and I'm interested to hear what you have to say, and hopefully we can share some information. Is there anyone who obviously I'm Chris Ballard. I don't know if we can go around quickly and you can give me your name. So
well, I think because you're half an hour late, we really want to get started, and a lot of us have some questions.
But
so,
you realize I'm a half an hour late because this wasn't a scheduled meeting. Okay.
Well, didn't we email in advance?
Yeah, and the mayor booked me, and the rest of them booked me months in advance. So that's how it works. Okay. And if we don't get through a meeting today, what we'll do is we'll schedule some more time.
Chris,
okay?
how much time do you have for us today?
Till 2 o'clock.
2 o'clock.
Till 2 o'clock, so we'll try to get
just
down to business quickly then.
Okay.
My name is Robin Constantopoulos. I'm not a constituent in this area.
Okay.
I
Are most of us constituents?
Yes.
Yes.
Yeah. Okay.
I head up a group called Autism Unplugged. We have 600 members, and the bulk of them are from this constituency, which is why I'm here. And I also have 2 children with autism. And I think the first question that I have for you is, where do you stand as a member of the Liberal Party? You not necessarily have the same thoughts and agreements. Not everybody's going to think exactly the same way as their party leads. So I guess what we want to know to start with is, where do you stand personally on the legislation that's supposed to come into effect on May 1st with the changes to the autism program?
Well, from a higher level, and that's where I'll start. From a higher level, and I have over 2 years spoken to dozens of parents who come in from my riding, who have children with autism, who have issues, obviously. A lot of the issues were around accessing IDI after their child turned 5, and the cost that they had to personally incur to continue on with that. So I've had many a discussion with the minister and in caucus about, we need more money, we need to make sure that children over the age of 5 can access IDI. The system isn't sustainable. All the thousands of children who are on a waiting list is inhumane. So that's where I've come from based on the many meetings I've had. I've had other groups this large sitting around this table to talk to me about the issue. And almost from day one, have talked to our ministry people, the minister, and at caucus about, we need a significant change.
Okay, so it sounds like
having said that,
it sounds like you have the right intentions.
yeah,
at heart.
I think I do. And having said that, you asked me specifically about the legislation,
Right.
and I'm not going to skate around it as some politicians might. My understanding of what the government is putting forward addresses the issues that I heard from so many of the parents who came before.
No, that is not true. Many
that-
of the parents
Let's
that met with you are present here in this room, and I was here as well, and it's not being addressed. What we wanted was more therapy, not less, and that
Okay.
the government is going strictly against
So
what the people want.
We can get into a shouting match,
I'm sorry.
or I can tell you what I understand this legislation to be, including a telephone conversation I had this morning with the minister and others from her ministry, just to get their latest thinking on it. So we needed to invest more money.
Yes.
That's what we were told. So there is $333 million of new money, not transferred money, not money that came from this program to this, this part of the autism program to this part of the program. $330 million of new money, right?
Right.
The second thing we've heard, and we've discussed this, is the experts who tell us that most children, not all, most children benefit from intensive therapy before they hit the age of 5. After that, some children benefit, but a lot of them will benefit from the ABA. And again, I'm not an expert in this. I learned this from parents coming to sit with me and talking to ministry people. So that was the second thing. Sorry, I'm getting ahead of myself.
That's okay, because I'd like to come back to something.
Okay, so the way I understand the legislation and the questions I asked the minister again today is that IBI isn't disappearing, ABA isn't disappearing. They're blending the two into an autism therapy session or treatment program. Program is the way, an autism program. And I have on Hansard, yesterday, she answered it in the House. Both the Premier and the Minister stood up and said, if a child needs IBI, the intensive therapy,
Yes.
after the age of 5, they will get it.
Right, okay, so
I need some help in understanding why that's
Absolutely.
not so.
no, because the way you're wording it makes it sound as though you've got this going in the right direction. So what's happening here is the Auditor General has made a very specific report about looking into IBI for all children, not just 0 to 5. And Kathleen Wynne has said that these children over the age of 5, that there's some kind of science around whether or not they require more or less therapy than 0 to 5. We don't have experts to that opinion. We have BCBAs, I'm sure you're probably familiar with that
No.
language as a, okay, so these are the
I'm
experts.
not an expert in this
Okay,
field.
and you know what, and I
I've learned
appreciate,
from-
I
I've learned
appreciate,
from
yeah,
talking to
and I
parents
appreciate
and
that,
others,
I appreciate that
So
you're,
that's, I hope, is part of what goes on today.
no, I appreciate that you're actually admitting that, because at least you're doing that
Well,
much.
in this role, you gotta be a specialist in, or you
Right.
have to be a generalist
So-
in most areas.
So what's happening is direct funding for children that are currently receiving therapy is, we've all been told that it's going to be canceled.
Yeah.
All the children on the wait list, the 16,000 children on the wait list, are going to be wiped out. Right? I understand that there's a new plan coming, but the problem is that the money that we currently have in place, there's enough there to give all of these children the treatment that they need right now without adding the extra 333 million. So this is kind of where we're struggling.
Okay.
And we're also struggling with where our voice is when we see the Auditor General speaking up for the people as a democratic voice for the people, and we see all of these parties speaking out, screaming out, saying, we need help. This is not right. Maybe we need to relook at this. What I think we want to know is, from your standpoint as a member of the Liberal Party, why is the Liberal Party not saying, can we not back this up a minute? Maybe we rushed into this a little bit too quick. Maybe we need to back this up and maybe look at some other ways.
Can I jump in for a second?
Sure thing.
So that question has been raised in caucus and in the House a bunch of times, and again, yesterday even with Minister McCharles. Why don't we grandfather the kids who, you know, are currently receiving IBI? Why don't we currently do that? And her response is that if we do that, if we grandfather the children who are currently in IBI, then we will. Then there's that money that we're spending on those children, which I think is $60,000 to $80,000 a year, is money that we can't spend to help clear the 16,000 who are getting absolutely nothing. So her concern, one second, just let me finish, if you don't mind, let me finish my thought. Her concern is that if we grandfather, then it will slow down the absorption rate of those 16,000 kids, many of whom then would go well past the 5-year mark and not receive any of the IBI.
But those 16,000 aren't going to get any funding.
I'd like to speak to the numbers. So the 16,000 refers to the kids on the IBI and ABA waitlist combined. So if we talk specifically about the IBI waitlist, there are currently, between the kids who are in funding right now getting service and the kids who are on the wait, or were on the wait list, there's approximately 4,000. It costs them $48,000 a year to direct fund each of those children. If you take 48,000 and multiply it by the 4,000 children in service and on the wait list, that gets you to 190 million. Currently, the government spends 192 million a year on the IBI program. So the question you have to ask is, if they could direct fund everybody and give each one of these children the service that they need, why are they choosing a method that cuts everyone off?
Yes.
85% of the children in service right now are 5 years old or over and are being cut off. And the question,
Being
another
cut off
question, from IBI.
Yeah. Okay,
This
so-
is the government's
so I-
numbers, 85%, not our
So when
numbers.
Tracy McCharles stands up in the House and the Premier stands up in the House, and again, they said it today.
I spoke to Frances Donovan a couple days ago, she's the director at CNR.
Yeah.
She told me my son is off the list.
Yeah.
As of May 1st, she told me that. And I would assume she would know.
Well, did you
But-
get a letter yet?
Yes, I did.
We all did.
Okay,
Yes.
so can I just read this one quote, because I have problems with the communication that really should have come directly from the government
Oh, I
and
have-
not through service providers.
Yeah.
I have a, but,
I have a problem with the service provider in general. with-
yeah,
Yeah, why is all the money
I'm
going through the
sorry,
service
but-
provider?
yeah, no,
It
can
costs
I only
us-
say this? I hear you.
Okay.
So,
So why is the
Okay,
government
so can I-
providing these
can I-
service providers with bigger contracts?
can I just give you, and should it be a service provider, should it be a school? Because that's another issue we hear, right? That you're getting service in two different venues, maybe we should have it in one venue, just the schools, for example. But,
And we're all in agreement in that.
Okay.
But we don't want to deviate from the legislation that's going to take effect on May 1st because it affects so many of our children.
so let me read this. This is what Tracy McCharles told the House. She said, so there was a question about autism funding. I won't read what the Premier said, because Tracy says it sums it up, I think, better in two questions. She says, this is a very important point, that children who are getting IBI will be assessed at their next scheduled clinical assessment. I don't know if you've been told that. A transition plan will be developed. If they need more intensive services, they're going to get that service. We will make sure that the plans are very flexible and individual, and based on that child's needs. That's the intention of the new program.
When? In 18 months from now?
And I can tell you, we got the discharge phone call
Yeah.
within a few days of the announcement.
Yeah.
So my son is.
With no other information
No,
given to you,
no, I
eh?
got the paperwork, with
Can I
they
ask a
couriered it to me the next day, so I
Yeah.
have it physically on
Somewhere
paper
I've got
that they're
another piece.
discharging.
Yeah.
Can I
And
just
hold on,
ask a-
I just want an answer to this. Because the government knows, it was in the Auditor General report,
Mhm.
that direct funding will help more children. So because they know this, why are they choosing to ignore it?
Well, I guess I can't speak for the minister on that, but we don't do everything. No government does everything an Auditor General tells her. The Auditor General is an auditor. We have but they're an auditor, right? They're not an autism specialist. The Auditor General also talks about Metrolinx. The Auditor General also talks about energy.
They're not listening to the autism experts either.
And well, I don't know about that, only that there is an
Has
expert
anyone
panel
ever-
that's been
has-
put together and
has
traveled
anyone
the
ever looked at
province.
the fact that Alberta, BC, New Brunswick, they don't have a wait list. They're all direct funded. That's their
Yeah.
method. There is
Yeah.
no wait list, and there's no age cap.
It
So
doesn't
you
have
guys,
to cost
somebody has to look at what you guys are paying people to do nothing for our children. That has to anger someone, unless someone's benefiting from that.
So you would be
In my
happier
opinion, that's-
if the funds were given
Yes,
directly
yes.
to a parent, and the parent
If
can
in
then go out to
BC,
the
they
marketplace?
give you money a year, I would be fine with that.
Why not?
Or directly to the service provider. I don't need to have access to that fund. I don't need, as long as the service is being given to my child, I don't need to have access to that money. No, I don't.
There was some
Parents would pay for that service, and if it's
Yeah, but a lot of
There was
parents
stuff
don't
on
have
my
that.
desk that wasn't included in the binder that came down this morning, and there was one piece I wanted to pull out, because there were some good bullet points, I think, that addressed, maybe it's here.
Just on the spending wise,
We've
like,
been-
if you
we've
take
been-
in our, we got 65 million for 2015, spent 43 million just on salaries and benefits.
Yeah,
That's the
exactly.
efficiency of the system. Because if you split all this individual ones, carries plays, everything, you'll see the money, like, 1/4 is not even reaching the service, who needs it.
Think about how many business managers Canark has, right? How
It
many
costs-
business
So-
managers do
So
they
around
have?
here,
How
it
many
sounds,
salaries?
as
But we
much
were
of the
here-
images
but
with
if you remember,
Canark
we
is
were here a
with,
year and a half
It's
ago,
all the
just saying
regional
all about
providers.
Canard,
yeah.
right? If you remember, I was here
Oh,
and we
yeah.
spoke about Canard. Those were
And
the
I
issues.
have taken that,
I have a
And
huge
it's
issue with
all
that. I
the
mean,
regional
I spent
providers.
$2,000 on a diagnosis for my son
Mhm.
when we suspected autism. They turned around and told me it was gonna be a 2-year wait list just to get that diagnosis. But then when I paid for it myself, it took me a few weeks to get in there to have a psychologist to confirm my son's diagnosis.
Right.
yeah.
That is a waste of money. That's a waste of everyone's time and money.
I had the same
And
experience.
that should piss people off. Like, That's government money. That's just being wasted and filtered through a system that's failing
It costs
disabled children.
The thing is, the government-
66% more.
Yeah.
The government
For
is
the
spending
cer-
enough money.
This is for age. This is
So
for
one at a time, sorry.
No one is asking the government to spend more money. That's not what we're asking. What we're asking is for the government to look at the way the program is being implemented. So right now, I don't know if you remember, we discussed how the government spends, and this is in the Auditor General report, for ABA, their program, it costs $4,000 for each kid that goes through the program. This is the program they're enhancing, so it's important to pay attention to this. $4,000 for each kid. The government, on paper, says that each kid is getting 3 to 4 hours of therapy per week for 8 to 12 weeks. In reality, what happens is you get 1 hour of consultation, parent consultation. They do not work with the kids for 8 weeks. Some people get a little bit more, but that tends to be about the maximum. Now, if I was to pay privately with $4,000, I could get 100 hours of ABA therapy.
Right.
Right? So the issue is not the amount the government is spending. The government's
It's
spending
how they're
enough.
spending.
It's how they're spending
In
it.
this
Yeah,
area.
yeah.
Not
This
just
area.
No, all, this is across the board.
All
But I
across
haven't heard
the
anything from my colleagues about the providers.
Yet.
Like I'm hearing here.
You will though.
You will.
It's coming. They're all gonna hear it.
You know what?
So
People
what
don't-
were you
Yeah,
saying?
yeah,
One second.
let's-
Let me let someone else speak.
No, that's okay. My point was the same as Anne's point. When it costs the government 66% more
To do it.
to,
And where
to
do these figures come from? Like
From
where
the
did
Auditor
that?
General report.
Okay, these are the Auditor General's
Yeah.
report, so
Yeah.
this
Yeah.
is her interpretation of how the funds
So
are
we,
spent.
Yeah.
we want that question
Dollars and
raised,
cents,
basic
right?
questions, like, we would like that question raised, because nobody has raised that question, and that's really.
Well, that's a
we-
good question. Yeah.
We've met with so many parents, hundreds, thousands
Yeah.
of parents, we have a Facebook group. Everybody wants this method, because we know that that works, it works in other provinces, it works everywhere else, I think we're the only
And
province that does it this way.
that's a
and our
good
kids are
question
not
that
getting
I
it.
haven't asked yet, and I haven't heard asked yet.
Mr. Ballard, if I may interject,
We would really like
if
if
I
you
may
just
layer
say-
on,
One second.
if I may layer on to the 66% increased cost for direct funded service, there's an additional 20% that comes right off the top just for administration. So the $330 million that they're planning, that the government's planning in 2018, $67 million of that is going to pay salaries. I would call that disgusting.
We would really like this question raised in Parliament so that everyone can be aware of what we're telling you now.
Yeah.
This is not, we're not making this stuff up, right? This is real dollars and cents. This is what's happening with
That's
the
a
money.
valid question,
And-
and
tax-
and
which
it's-
is why,
Sir, so
which is where
it's our money as well.
which is why I wanted to meet with you, because this is how I learn.
And I also have, like, I mean, I personally, I'm speaking for
Very
myself now.
respectful.
Yep.
I've paid over $100,000 in the last 2.5 years for my son's therapy myself.
Mhm.
That's all money I've paid HST on. I haven't received a dollar of that back.
Yeah.
I don't think that's fair. I mean, there's a lot of parents in this room that are paying out of pocket
Yeah.
for the therapy that we're paying taxes on. We're not getting any benefit. When my accountant goes to file my taxes, he files it just under medical. It's not even anything that I get any
Yeah,
kind of benefit
Me too,
from.
me too.
And I'm sacrificing a lot. I'm sacrificing his money for him for college. I mean, we can't go on vacation.
No, we don't go on vacations.
You know, like, I can't pay off my mortgage quickly. There's a lot of sacrifices that me and my family have to make.
Mortgage, most of us have mortgage in default because of
People are-
the stuff,
exactly.
the money
People
we're
are
putting
remor-
in.
I'm thinking about remortgaging my home because I don't know what else to do.
Yeah.
And I don't think that's fair. I don't live in a country where I think that I should have to make those sacrifices when I could move to Alberta and
Yeah.
feel like I'm being taken care of and my son is cared about. I don't think I should have to do that. I shouldn't have to leave everybody I love. I've built a life here.
Yeah.
You know,
I agree.
like, my husband has a
So-
company, so I
Can I
So,
just
so I've heard
mention
from a
about
few
the
people,
enhanced ABA? I just want-
before we begin, I just want to see who else is in the group, because we've had a couple of people with some strong opinions, but I just want to make sure that anyone else who's around the table, if you have anything you want to add.
I would like to add, because you did cite the expert committee that
Yeah.
the lower government did convene to make these decisions, and nowhere in that report did they say there was an age 5 cutoff. If you read the report, there's no recommendation for that
Mhm.
whatsoever. And those experts, well, nobody's going to dispute that they're experts in their field.
Mhm.
Not one of them was a board-certified behavior analyst, not one person. And those are the true experts in a position
Yeah.
to dispute the claims
Mhm.
of a science that says that at age 5, when you blow out your candles, this therapy is no longer good for you.
Yeah.
Or, I mean, what happens now to this
But-
16,000 children What happens to them? Like, who, if
So
these
my-
16,000 children don't learn to talk, because let's be real here. Most of them are nonverbal. One of them is mine,
Yeah.
Mine too.
right? So they don't learn to talk because they haven't had that intensive therapy, right? So fast forward 20 years. Now, who's going to take care of them? It's going to cost 3 times the amount on the government to take care of these kids because they didn't have that intensive therapy between age, let's say, 0 and 10. Let's just throw a number out there, just hypothetically
I mean, that
speaking.
goes for all sorts of services that government needs to deliver at a young age to make people more productive as they get older. But just to speak to what you're saying, so my understanding, and again confirmed, is that it's not that IBI is disappearing after age 5. Right? I mean,
Can I
that
speak
it
to that?
still will
Because
be
they
an
have a
intensive,
webinar.
that it still will be an intensive.
No, we've gotten letters saying that it's
You know
gone.
what? Can I speak
So,
to that? 'Cause that
well,
was
let me
in
just
the-
read
but
this,
that was
so
in
let
the
me just
webinar.
read this again, right? That the children who are getting IBI will be assessed at their next scheduled clinical assessment. A transition plan will be developed. If they need intensive services, they're going to get that service.
Okay,
hold
so
on.
Chris,
But
so-
I need to tell you what Jane Cleve said.
The problem becoming here is that the plan from day to day is different. So what you just read is something that we would actually like to hear more about.
Okay.
But the
And I think that's-
right, okay, so where we're struggling
think
here
what's
is that
happening-
we're losing faith in our government. We're losing faith in the Liberals because
I
what we're
hear-
hearing is, Kathleen Wynne at Queen's Park saying, I really don't know what I'm talking about here.
Yeah.
Then putting it onto the Minister of Social Services, who has no idea what she's talking about, who breaks down in public because she really can't deal with the fact that all of this is being put on her. And then now we're hearing all of these back deals that are being made and all of these extra pieces of information that are suddenly coming to light from a
And I
plan that
think-
hasn't
I think
really been
that's-
exposed.
I think that's the problem. If I had a criticism of how this rolled out, it would be that we should have done a better job with the details before we announced it.
Can I
But there are no details.
But there are no details, that's the problem. They're being
Well,
made
that's
up as you go
right,
along.
But I think there are, but I think that's the problem.
No.
right? There shouldn't have been an
There aren't
announcement until
details.
they had details ready. to go.
Right, and so
Then
what
they
happened?
could have said,
Can I
this
speak
is
to
what
that
we're
one?
doing, well, give me a second to respond. They're saying, here's the change, and here are the details behind it. If they had done that, and I will 100% agree with you, there still may have been a lot of concern, because any change brings concern. But those types of comments should have been there from day one. It should have been very clear that there will not be, if a child requires intensive, because these are questions I've asked from day one, and we're getting them 2 weeks later or whatever. Are we just gonna, all those kids who have been on the waiting list for IBI are suddenly gone?
Yeah.
Well, they
And-
are.
No, but they are though.
Yes, they
Well,
are.
They are, they're gone.
But what the minister is saying is the transition plan will detail how they get that intensive treatment. If they
Okay,
require
but it's not for 2 years.
They've been wiped out.
And they're saying that this intensive therapy is going to be 0 to 5. So if a kid gets diagnosed at age 4, which is the general consensus of when people figure it out, oh, you know what, maybe this actually is autism, right? So now they get in at age 4 to early intervention. Early intervention says, you know what, this may be autism. We need to get you on the list
Yeah.
for diagnosis. 6 months in, they get their diagnosis. 6 months later, guess what?
It's too late.
You're out.
Yeah.
Like, this isn't acceptable, right?
Robin, can I just speak?
Please,
to what
please
the
do,
enhanced
please.
ABA is? So the government keeps talking about we're going to transition to enhanced ABA, which currently doesn't exist. So there were several webinars, I don't know if you had a chance to hear them, but Jane Cleve from the ministry, she discussed and she said, it is the same as the current ABA system, but they're increasing the amount of time. So remember I told you what it is? So now, starting in 2017, so not now, but in 2017, it's going to increase to up to 20 weeks. And then by 2021, it's changing to up to 32 weeks. Okay?
20,
So-
24, then to 32 or 36,
Yeah,
yeah.
but enhancing a system that's not working continues to not work. They're not saying we're actually going to give therapy. They're saying they're not changing it. There is going to be no direct funded model, which means parents have no choice in who their therapist is, who's gonna work best with their child. It costs the government far more money than
Yep.
it needs to, right? If you want to help these children, you don't need to spend more money, you just need to spend the money you have effectively. You know,
Yeah,
it's
I think we're all in
really
agreement. I think there's Ann just said that perfectly. Yeah, yeah,
The
she
other
really
thing
did.
that I just feel like with that system in place, it empowers the parents. So like, for me, because we've been paying for it privately, we've had so many people help us to understand how to even deal with our son.
Mhm.
You know what I mean? Like, parents absolutely need that to just function in their home. Because if you think about a parent on the brink of a breakdown because they have no help, I can't even get there of what you're capable of.
We had to bring in practicum students to volunteer in my home because we couldn't afford the therapy.
If everyone can
Like,
get
it's
that help,
ridiculous.
direct method, and you choose who you want to work with, who you really feel, there are people with my son that I've had to say, you know what, it's not working, you know, we need to try something different.
You don't get to
We
do
know
that.
our kids, we know, we live with them every day, we know what they're capable of, and we know when it's not working, and we want it to work. And I think when you empower the parents, then it's successful for everyone. Because then you have parents that know how to deal with their kids, and know how to advocate, and know how to just live in the house, and how to deal with it.
And then later on, if you want to start looking at the instruction schools, right? I know that they're looking at starting to put this into the schools, which is really ultimately what we want. But what we need is a diagnosis at age 2,
Yeah.
right?
And that's certainly something.
Which is
I've
Ministry
heard-
of Health.
I've heard-
You know,
I've
like
heard
you know
from
all
day
this,
one
right?
we need
Like
that, yeah.
Ministry of Health, Ministry of Education, and the Ministry of Social Services are not working together, right? We know this.
But that's all very big, and we can't change all that.
We can't.
But we
For
can
the
very
hearing
easily.
now, people are getting letters, they've been told
That's
they're
right.
gonna get a check for $8,000, which is not gonna cover anything.
So I guess what we want to know from you, Chris, because you've been very respectful, you're really letting us lash out at you right now, and we appreciate that because we're angry. We want to know what you're going to go back to Parliament and tell them.
Well,
Because I know that you're liberal, right? So I understand that you kind of have to follow the lead of the leader, but what does that...
At the same time, we stand up in caucus and we speak our mind.
Okay,
Will
so-
you ask a question for us about why all the regional agencies are being rewarded with further contracts after wasting so much money?
I will ask the minister that, absolutely.
Awesome.
I won't be able to ask it in the House, but I will ask it in
Why
caucus.
not in the House?
Because let's have a politics 101 after that. But actually, the way things go is, the way things operate is that, but you know what, maybe I should ask a question, maybe not as directly as
Because
that.
it's not anti-liberal government. It's, the question is
Listen,
why.
I would have to
are
see,
we
anyway, I'll
This
have to
is
see how I
so
can
much
phrase
better
that.
than
But
what we've
maybe
gotten
what we
before.
want is, we want her to answer that question
Yeah.
in a way. But regardless, right, sometimes it takes weeks to get an answer lined up in the House, right? Like, we only get 3 questions in question period.
Yeah, like you get your
So-
30 seconds. So if
And
you
we get a
could...
30-second question, so
Yeah.
usually
We wanna see that
personally, I
question
find
right.
what's more, and then frankly, they want to know what the question is, so they can research it for 6 weeks before they give the minister the answers. What I find more effective is I stand up in caucus in front of all of my MPPs, friends, and talk about what's happening in my neck of the woods, and the minister is there, and I have a chat with her. I sit down beside her in the House, and we have a good chat, and she sits 2 chairs away, so we do that frequently. And we talk to her policy people. Those are the things that I do that I find, frankly, are more effective than the theater of question period.
It is.
Yeah. I've been there for 2 years, I totally agree. Where the real work gets done is in committees. That's where all.
That may be
parties get
so, but
together.
you need to understand that I think that the general public, 1 in 45, right? 1 in 45 kids that we know of
Yeah.
has autism. The general public needs to see someone stand up in the House and say,
So, yeah.
somebody needs to listen, right?
So can I get some, and maybe you've put it in an email already, or
Yes,
it's on
we
your
have
Facebook
copies.
page or something like that?
No, be careful what you wish for here.
I don't need another freaking briefing book that I don't have time to go through, and it's just the same message delivered
We
10
have a
different
one-page
ways.
sheet that
If
I
you
would
have
be
a
happy to
one-page
email
sheet
you.
that I could use to work on
Yes.
how I'm going to approach the minister, then
It's not-
whatever answer she gives me, whether I like it or not, or you like it or not, I'll let you know what was said, right? I mean,
That's
so
fair.
you're asking me to, and I'm happy to do that. I mean, that's why I'm here.
I just want the questions mentioned publicly so that people can see what's going on. I don't think that the minister is aware of what's going on with the money.
I agree.
For the general public,
Yeah.
this is all
Right.
good news.
I think
I
what they
agree.
see is, we're gonna invest $333 million, which sounds awesome, but then the regional providers and all these other agencies involved are going to piss away all that money, and the kids are not gonna get the help they
Yeah.
need.
And that's the truth.
It is the truth. Like, for example, when my,
So what
I have,
you've done is
I've,
you've shifted the dialogue, in my mind, from what I thought I was gonna hear,
We like
quite
it.
frankly, to a completely different area.
no, like, we want to be reasonable. But
No,
like,
no, but I'm saying that's.
you're giving us the money. We're not, nobody's complaining that the money, it's the way it's being
Well,
Most of us
handled.
don't
And
want
that's-
it. Like, most
that's
of us are
the
sitting there
interesting
not even
point.
caring about the $8,000. Like, I don't care. You know, that's not the issue.
Nobody cares about the $8,000.
Nobody cares, because that's,
Yeah,
No.
they keep throwing the $8,000. I mean, the $8,000 was mentioned in my letter 6 times.
yeah.
It's
And
not
our
true.
government
I'm not
already has a
I'm not
direct
writing,
funded,
you
sorry,
know?
our government already has a direct funded system within MCSS. So maybe speak with Helena Jasic.
Yeah.
They have a system for SSAH. They
Okay.
already have it. So, people get the
They're
funding
already-
directly, they submit their receipts for respite. But what we need is a system like that for therapy. We don't
Yeah.
have a system like that
Yeah.
for therapy. The
Yeah.
government doesn't need to reinvent the wheel.
Yeah.
They've already got it.
Well, it's interesting because, what's interesting just is that.
That you actually understand what we're saying? That's interesting,
well,
yes.
It's,
I'm sorry, I couldn't resist.
well, you're not the first people who've come and talked to me about provision of services by certain community-based organizations. I am one lone MPP. It's difficult tackling that, frankly. But that doesn't mean I don't ask questions and keep asking the questions and keep pointing.
We're meeting Ann Holbrook next week, so maybe I can get her to help you.
We're meeting
Yeah,
with
Ann's a
everyone.
good one.
Yeah.
She's a good burr under the saddle. So that, who else are you meeting with? Well, I mean, if they don't know yet, don't tell me.
Ann knows.
Yeah.
Everyone who will meet.
No,
with
Ann
us.
is
That's who we're
ace.
meeting with.
She's really good. I mean, she's a kindergarten teacher, right? And she's got that big heart of a kindergarten teacher. And we're all supposed to be. I mean, I know in my ministries, I'm responsible for government and consumer services, but the one that's nearest and dearest to my heart is the poverty reduction strategy. And quite frankly, so much of what we're talking about here, and when I have other parents come in with children, say with Down syndrome, or teenage parents with teenagers who have significant mental health issues, in my mind, this is all about poverty reduction. It's about keeping kids, in this case, I mean, when all the parents here are gone, keeping their kids safe and secure. So even though it's outside my mandate for funding, in my heart, this is all about making sure that 30 years down the road, 40 years down the road, your children are safe and sound.
And we will be living.
And if I can freaking well do it and save the government money, then I'm a hero.
Yes.
But I gotta sit down with the minister and say, surely she's had these questions asked to her. She's no dummy. I mean, she is not a dummy. She's one of the brightest people I know. So how did this either slip by her, or what's her reasoning for why she didn't want to go down this route?
That's a good question.
Right, that's my question, because, I mean, she was the former minister of the ministry I'm assigned to. She did so many amazing things with consumer law that we're still passing it. Like, she lined up so much good stuff we're still passing. I can't believe she would move on somewhere else and miss something this big, or why did she make a decision?
Like, there's a lot of regional providers who will potentially, a lot of people who will potentially be out of a job if.
Well,
There's a lot of people that are
not.
not speaking up, but we've tried to get to speak out, and they will not. Everyone is afraid for their job.
And you also have to look at the regional providers and non-regional providers. Why did they form their own coalition? Why did they all need to band together and speak the same line to everyone, as opposed to working with us? None of them are helping us. They're all, because they're getting these huge government contracts. I mean, and they're huge. It's
Well,
massive.
you know what, and honest to gosh, okay, all the briefings I've been in, I was talking to the minister this morning, We have discussed this and heated discussions in caucus. I mean, they're very passionate MPPs when it comes to this. I was on the line with Yasser Naqvi from Ottawa today and talking with him about what's happening in Ottawa. He's very passionate about what's going on. So it's not like there's this, maybe on the surface it looks like, you know, that old thing about the duck moving across the surface of the water looks very calm, but beneath the surface the feet are going quite quickly. So we talk about this in caucus, we grill Tracy, I talked to her about it, but this is honestly the first time in talking with my fellow MPPs that this issue has come up about are we spending the money wisely? That is there a more effective way to spend the money?
But this is why everybody's freaking out.
There absolutely is.
So maybe we
Yeah,
can
but how it's
just
being
slow it
framed,
down.
but how it's being framed in the House by the opposition members is a more emotional one. And you know, when you get beat on the head with how could you treat children so shamelessly? I mean, Tracy McCharles she's had her own challenges with her children, right? She's the mom of a special needs kid, and she totally gets.
Yeah, but Tracy McCharles also makes 6 figures. Like, let's be
Well,
realistic.
she didn't.
Right.
And so the NDP were attacking her on that, which really ticked me off. When she was dealing with these issues, she was dealing with these issues.
Okay, so I'm going to talk about myself for a second. When my son
Well, that's
misses
what's
a
been
day,
happening, though. It's become very personal, and
So
we.
let's talk about
So
how we
it's
can
strayed
fix it.
away from the real issue, which I think is more this.
Yes.
so
this
when
is-
when my son misses a day at therapy, the money goes back to the service provider and vanishes.
Yeah.
That money,
Doesn't go into a pot.
no,
Doesn't wait.
no. When it's gone, and nobody knows where this money just happens to go to.
Yeah.
Sorry, the room's booked at 2 o'clock on the business.
Yeah, sorry. Okay,
I'm gonna
so
keep
somewhere we've got those questions, right?
Yes.
Okay,
I've
good.
got the
And you will
documents.
ask those questions. If Ann sends them to you, you will ask those
I
questions.
will, that's my job.
Because you know we're watching, right? And we know where you live.
You know where I live?
No, you
That's
don't.
just downright creepy.
Got a pen with your name on it.
But everybody knows where I live. I'm in the phone book. But no,
You know-
this is what I do. I
Somebody
will take
collect
those.
these.
I will take the question to here or to Tracy, and I'll ask her personally.
Anybody next month?
And we'll see. And Ann is good. So maybe what we should. When are you meeting with Ann?
Next Thursday.
Next Thursday.
We need to get it.
Oh, next week
public.
is constituency week. So I won't see, but I can try and get.
Why
in
don't
touch
you
with
make
her.
it public on May 5th, because we'll all be there at Queen's Park. cheering
I'm
you
a
on.
constituent
Oh,
before.
yeah.
I used to be
Yeah,
Newmarket,
we'll be there
Aurora,
to
but
speak.
Market, now you're up in Ann.
now up in the second, yeah, so she agreed me.
So maybe, I'm just wondering if Ann and I can meet with her. Anyway, we'll worry about the logistics, but I will ask her the questions and I'll let you know what she tells me.
And we want them to alter the current plan